Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me this morning and being part of this class. We're going to take a look at lesson 2 and some of the things that we're going to have to look at when we're taking our base plan into consideration. So this is definitely an important step in the design process, in that the better your base plan is, the easier things are going to be as you go forward. Now, whether that be this class or whether it's a design you're doing for a client. So base plans are definitely something you do want to focus on. And today we're going to, we'll go through a couple of student examples. We'll go through a couple of examples that my wife and myself have produced, and just give you a general idea of some of the elements that you're going to want to consider when you're putting this together. So what maybe I will do right now, we'll just review the lesson itself, and I can go through again a couple examples, and we'll take a look at the questions and see if anybody has any questions from the floor here today. Okay, just share my screen. All right. So here we are at lesson 2, and you can see we've got a couple of things to look at. And the base plan is the first item. And of course, this is something, again, that you really want to focus on, put a lot, actually, both the client survey and the base map. But the base map in particular is going to really help as a starting point for your design process. So let's take a look at some of the items that we're asking for. So when you're putting your base plan together, of course, there's a list here, and some of them may seem, obvious, but they are important to include, and they're basically best practices. So going forward after the class, if you're doing a design for a client or for yourself again, you definitely want to consider including all of these. So a good example of this is something that I ran across a few years ago when we designed a landscape for a client, and we placed a rain garden within the landscape. And then when we got a little bit closer to installing it, we discovered that the rain garden was going to be sitting in and around a sewer line. So we had to make some changes during the installation, and it all worked out. But it would have been much preferred to know that ahead of time. And sometimes you're not going to know for sure where all of the underground services are, but quite often you can narrow it down. So let's take a look at some of these elements here that we're going to want to take into consideration. So again, you want your site and your project name, and always put your name on all design sheets, okay? The address and location, unless you're trying to keep this somewhat private, you're concerned about having this location displayed to others. If that is the case, just let me know, and maybe perhaps you could send me the address in a message. And the reason for that is often I will go onto Google Earth during the class, during grading some of the lessons, and it's really helpful to know the exact location. You want your date and your north arrow, and you certainly want to have a scale bar there. Any structures that are existing. Now, if you have a project site that doesn't have a structure on it, what you're going to want to consider is to put in a proposed building footprint. Okay, so quite often quite often we'll see students that have a bare lot. Well, we'll call it a bare lot, maybe treed, but you do want to, put in a proposed structure because that's really going to be your center of human activities. And that'll become obvious as we go through the course here. We want to see the roof ridges and where the water falls, what direction. You want to put in any roads, any pathways, any underground utilities. Those are very important, as well as overhead utilities. Now, depending on where you live, you may be able to easily access the underground utility information. You may have to guess as well. So for instance, where I live, it'll be quite obvious where, let's say, a water meter is from a community water system, but it won't be obvious where the line goes from the meter to the house. So that requires a little bit of guessing game. Again, you got overhead utilities. We want to see some contour lines. Now, this may be tricky for some of you to find, but we're going to review a bit of that today. So I'll give you some examples on where to get some information with that. Any fences or waterways or spigots or taps on the outside of the house. If your site has any wells, we want to see that. And existing significant vegetation. So I say significant because if you have, really small herbaceous plants, it's good to make a list of those, but it may not really be critical to put them in the drawing itself. But trees and shrubs are important to place in there as along with a legend. All right. All right, sorry. Looks like Hannah popped a note here in the chat. A tip for sewer information. Sewer company sent me as-built. Excellent. That's great. That's a really good bit of information. So thank you for that. Yeah, that can also be the case with septic systems. You often get an as-built. Okay, so existing vegetation. We want to have a legend or a key so we know that the symbols that you've included there, what they are. And often with property lines, they are either in red or yellow. And I would lean towards red. I think that they are indeed, that's a little bit more universal. Often they're dashed too. So, it's really not that vital, but the coloring does help. Any easements? So that's important because often we'll have rights of way through a property. It's quite surprising how often residential lots will have sewer or water lines going through the back of the property, and that's an easement that you have to be mindful of. There may be a day that comes when the area, city, or town needs to get access to that. And good examples of that is where I used to live in Ladner. My wife and myself had our first house, and we put in a big garden in the front, of course. And we had a sewer line go, and the city had to come along and excavate the whole boulevard, which was incredibly disruptive to our garden. So you wouldn't want to put anything permanent there. And we were quite lucky we could move all our plant material, but that is a big concern for sure. And then any other features that you feel are important or are going to be significant during the design process. So that is a base plan kind of overview. Let us take a peek here at a couple of examples. Sorry, I'm going to have to, I didn't get this set up beforehand, but this might be a good opportunity just to show everybody. If you want to see some examples, you just go under this modules tab when you log in, and you will notice right here, there's some sample reports. Let's take one here. And we'll scroll down to, there we go. There is an example of a base plan. And you may think, well, that's, not colorful, and it's not really, it's not what you envision a base plan to be, but it can be colored. And in this case, this student has done 2 different base plans. And I understand that there was a lot of information that they wanted to include, but what I might suggest to everybody is you try and create just a single base plan so they have all the info within one drawing, because basically what we're going to do is use this as, just as it says, a base plan, and we're going to build our design layers on top of that. So again, the more information we have in the base plan, the easier it's going to be for us. And again, yeah, having 2 is kind of tricky. Now, this person also has a contour map here that they've placed, and ideally, we would like to see those contours and any utilities all on one sheet. So try and do that if you're able to. We're going to get to the contour part of the drawing and where to find that. So no problem there. So that's one example. Again, there are several here. We'll just skim along and see. Sorry, this is a PDF, so it might load a bit slower. Here's a base map that this person has done. And there's some color, and there's quite an extensive legend on the right here. And they've made a grayscale version of that. And then they made a zone 1 base map. Now you don't have to do that. This is a larger site. And their title block is on the left. But their map is north up, so that's an important thing to keep in mind. If you're able to do that, you definitely want to have your map north up. So again, you can see there's a number of different layers within this base map, and you really want to try and squeeze all those items onto one single map. Okay, so what I think I'll do is just show you a couple of base maps that we have done. So this is a project that we had a drone survey done. And so we had high resolution images or image that was all stitched together. And it also gave us all this wonderful contour information. And if we go in a bit closer, we can see that the contours have numbers assigned to them, right? So we have 1 foot contours here. And we have our existing trees and a driveway and existing planting areas. And we could even zoom in a little bit, and we have some of their existing trees and shrubs documented here. These won't mean much to you at the moment because they are coded, but that was on another sheet that we presented. We weren't too concerned about that right now. So that's basic. You can see that we've got a north arrow and a scale bar along with a label here. Let me just show you another one that this one's of a small farm, so it has other items on the sheet at the same time, because when we do farm designs, we use the REX or the agrarian protocol. So it's a little bit different. It's, permaculture design plus, we'll say that. Anyhow, you can see the base plan at the bottom here. And again, we have contour data, and we'd have to zoom in to see what those are, but they are 1 foot contours. And in this case, we didn't have a drone survey. We were trying to save our clients a little bit of money here because it's not always practical to do that, but we were able to obtain LiDAR data and convert that. So we were able to create our own contours based on that information that was freely available. So we placed that in here, and we used Google Earth to map out a lot of the elements. So that was really helpful. And it's really basic, right? In this case, there's not much going on with this property. It used to be an abattoir, so they used to basically slaughter chickens for small markets and stuff. So the new owners here want to create a really diverse small farm with a lot of some perennial crops, some orchards, and a bit of annual vegetable too. So again, we've got labels here, and most likely you'll be using a legend. And really, whether you do label or legend, it's completely fine either way, as long as we know what we're looking at. And up top here, this is a bit of an overview. And then we were able to generate slope analysis. But again, we're getting into a realm where we're not really too concerned about that at the moment. So I got a couple more items in the chat here. Okay, Anthony wants to know the usual cost of a drone survey. Well, that really does depend. Where I live in British Columbia on Vancouver Island, this to do a property this size, it's probably, around $1,000, but that's Canadian dollars. So that's slightly different. We don't have quite the same value as the American dollar. For instance, in Oregon, there is so much free LiDAR data, you may not have to go that route. We often, well, it really is site specific. A project we're just about to start, we had to do drone data because the LiDAR data map did not include the project site. So it really does depend. But yeah, in and around $1,000. And Joe's got a question here. What sensors and other data does the drone gather? Well, there are a lot of different types of drones. They have developed LiDAR drone imagery, which should be incredible, but they're very expensive. I think they're $30,000, $40,000 per unit. The fellow that we use, it's photo, got to get the name pronounced right here. It's photogrammetry. So what it is, it takes high resolution images, but it's also reading the elevation of the ground. And it works really well in sites that have that are open. If we have a lot of wooded areas or trees, it does not read anything below the tree canopy. Whereas LiDAR is different. It does see the ground. So it's not quite as good. But for many sites, especially ones that have been cleared, it's a good fit. All right, so I think I have one more. Yeah. So this is an interesting base plan. We also do commercial landscape design. And in this, we are dealing with multiple consultants. We have architects and civil engineers. So this is a base plan that we received along with electronic DWG plan from a surveyor. Okay, so they have taken a Google Earth image. They did a topographic survey, which they placed on top of the image here. And they have also placed some information regarding some of the services, catch basins, sewers. You'd have to zoom in a little bit here to see it. And the road itself, and some of those services that are in and around the road. So that again is more for commercial. And when we do commercial projects, we don't really use this kind of a document. We often get what's called a DWG file that we import, and so we don't have to do any of this manually. It's just dropped right into the drawing. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of variety with base plans. And let's go back to I seem to have, that's really unusual. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my, aha, there we are. Okay, that was a student example. We're going to get rid of that. So again, yes, do check out the modules page. And I know that in the last Q&A meeting, I mentioned this, but there is a really cool page here in the client interface. And this is where Andrew and myself and Kilda and Neil go through our design process from start to finish. So for anybody who wants to or is considering doing this for professional purposes, I would highly recommend taking a look at all of these. I was really excited to go through this because everybody has a completely different process, as you'll see. And it's really interesting to see how everybody approaches that. All right, so that is the base map. Maybe what I'll do, let's just take a quick look at the client survey. That is quite a bit more straightforward. Now, this is equally as important. And if you're designing your own project site, this may seem, oh, sorry. This may seem a little bit redundant, but when you're designing for somebody else, one of the key parts of the whole process is knowing what they want. And with ourselves, we have a client survey. It's a little more extensive than the one in the template file, but it's basically doing the same thing. We're wanting to know what the client likes about their property, what they don't like, what they're hoping that this whole process will address, because it's normally people want to design because they identify some sort of problem or deficiency on their property. So the survey is vital, and we actually have people fill in a survey before we will even meet with them. And in our first meeting, which is actually a phone meeting, we do that as a means of trying to ensure that we're a good fit for the client and vice versa. It saves a little bit of time. So we'll have them fill in a client survey and we'll review it during the call. And for us, we want clients that want to make an ecological difference on their property, whether that's creating a better a yield, enhancing the ecological system for for themselves and for the environment around them. They have to fit into a niche of some description. We come from, early on in our business, we were much more focused on traditional landscapes, and, we're going back 25 years. And we didn't go through the same process we go through today. So we wouldn't have a client fill in a survey, but we would take notes and listen. But there was nothing really concrete to reference. So the survey is an excellent idea. And over time, if you do pick this up professionally, over time, you will undoubtedly refine your process. I mean, I think we shift our process ever so slightly with every new client. And we're just trying to get better and better and better. And ultimately, it's all about providing the best possible value to the client, as well as making it the best possible experience for ourselves. So this survey is really important. And in this class, it's important, but going forward, it does really affect your abilities as a designer, right? It's going to give you the constraints that you need, because if you don't have constraints, it makes it really difficult. One of the worst experiences we've had with clients way back in the day is people that say they don't know what they want. They know that they don't like their landscape, but they have no idea what they want. And that's a bit of a red flag for us. So we will work with the person and try and determine that. But if they don't know what they want, then the odds are you're not going to be able to provide them the value. So that's the survey, and there's some assignment resources here, which I'm sure you're going to want to take a look at. How to make a scale bar, some of these basic tutorials on the base map. And I'm sure at this point, some of you are going to, are trying to sort out how you're going to assemble the graphics end of this course. Are you going to use a computer? Are you going to do this by hand? Or are you going to use an iPad? iPads are really interesting tool for landscape design, especially those starting out. There is an excellent, I'll just pop this in. I know that's one of the questions. Oh, that might not get me that. Oh, there we are. So Morpheo Trace is a really good low-cost software. Works on an iPad. Probably works on Windows-based. I'm pretty sure it does. And we have it. It's got a license fee, I think, of about $35 a year. So it's, almost free. And we use it not really for design. It's more for some really rough conceptual drawings, and it is fantastic. I guess the downside of it is there's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not horrendous, but for anybody wanting to start designing and they don't feel they really have great drawing skills, like myself, I drawing by hand is not my strong point. This is a great place to start. So, okay. Again, there's some resources. There's some, there's quite a few resources here. You'll notice there's some topo maps, USGS topo maps that you can access. There is Contour Map Creator. So let's take a look at that. And that, again, is one of the questions that we have for today. I think it was Joseph. So he was using Contour Map Creator, and he was just not sure about what information he was being shown. So let's go to that. I do not know why that is happening. Okay, well, I'll try that on a different browser here. 2 seconds. There we go. Just switch over. Okay, so this is Contour Map Creator. Let us get, that's really odd. The resolution is not quite what it should be. I'm not sure why that's messing up on me today, but no worries. Let us just, we're gonna zoom in. I'll zoom in somewhere close to where I am here. All right, so once you have your project site on the screen here, what you want to do is fill in the plot options. So what I like to do is have level intervals. So they're sort of fixed intervals. And in this case, it's 5 foot. So we'll start with 1 foot intervals. And once you've done that, you then go up to the top left and bottom right of wherever it is you want data from. So let's just presume this is the space I want to get data from. And then once you've defined that, you would just go to this button here. Maybe what I'll do, I'll get my highlighter going here. There we are. You go to Get Data and you press that, and boom, you have your 1 foot contours. And on the right here is your legend. Okay, so you can see this is higher ground, this is lower ground, and it looks like it slopes in both directions to this low point here. And then if you want to change what you're viewing, maybe there's too much information, you can always change the interval and ask it to redraw it until you get it where you want it. So if your site is large and has a lot of elevation change, 1 foot contours will probably look pretty busy. So now the caveat here is this is a great software for this course in that we get to practice our designing, and when we get to lesson number 5, we're going to have to predict how water travels through the site. So this is vital information for that, but we just want to keep in the back of our mind that these contours are not horribly accurate. They're deriving all of this off of Google Earth, which is just doesn't have really accurate contour information. So as nice as this is, I would not be utilizing it for any work for pay, because it just wouldn't have the accuracy that would be needed. Okay, so that's a little bit about Contour Creator. I'm going to just go back to my other browser so we can get our questions here. There we are. Sorry about that. Too many things open. All right, we'll close that. We'll go to our questions. So Joseph's question. So yeah, we walked through how to use Contour Creator. So are there better suggestions for better contour line generators? I don't personally know of any other contour line generators that are going to be any better than this. So yeah, for this class, that's pretty much what you're going to have to use, unless you're able to find contour data locally. And certainly Oregon has a lot of LiDAR data. I think they have pretty much mapped the whole state. So you may find that information within interactive maps of your area. So where I live, they have I'm within the regional district of Nanaimo. And within that, I can get 1 meter contours. That's part of the map. And so 1 meter is just over 3 feet. It's not ideal, but it is a starting point. So you can take a look at that. And yeah, just 1 second, please. I'm just going to shut my door here. 1 sec. All right, sorry about that. I don't have a very good noise canceling mic, so you'll probably hear my whole household. All right. Yeah, so look, let's say your project site was in Portland and you look up the city of Portland, you could Google, well, we can do that right now just for fun. So I would say interactive map for Portland. And you may find it within this. So there you go. This is basically the same interface that we would see up in Canada here. So you have a number of different layers. There's a little bit of a learning curve to figure this out. And you'd have to go through and often they'll give you the parcel layouts. It's very, very handy mapping. It's a great starting point anyways. So I would check that out. And good design apps. Well, we talked about Morpheo Trace. Again, it's a great starting point. That's low cost. The design software that I use, you wouldn't want to be looking at, I'm sure, because it's just a little bit too expensive and takes a bit of a learning curve. So Grace had a question here. Okay, so you discovered that you can get a student trial of Vectorworks. Absolutely, yeah. Anybody could get a 30-day trial. And now a student trial may be longer, which would be nice. And let's see here. Yeah, it's pretty incredible software. That's what we use, but let me just show you the interface of it, and it will give you a bit of an idea. So that is the interface. There is so much to it that, it would take you about a year to learn, right? It's got a big learning curve. Once you learn it, you're good. But we've been very lucky in that we've used this software for 25 years. And as it's grown, we've learned the tools that have come with it. But it's an extremely powerful tool. It's just a little bit over the top to dive into it during this course. That would be my opinion, because it does take a fair amount of effort to learn it. Now, when you purchase this, if you did purchase it, you would definitely have the ability to access educational components, tutorials on how to use the software, but it's a professional grade software that does take A, quite a bit of expense to purchase, and B, it is a bit time consuming initially to learn it. So I think you'd be better off with something more like Morpheo Trace, or something where you're really able to focus on the permaculture design process rather than the actual software. And let's see here, poke around, just getting to the. So Grace is just saying here, anything you create within the trial has a watermark. So if you went to print something, you would have the Vectorworks watermark on it. So it's not for professional use, it's for playing around with. But we were very lucky back in the day that we gravitated towards this, because it's been very, very helpful for our work anyways. So Gabriel has a few things. She's using Smart Draw, which seems to be pretty easy. That's great. Thank you, Gabriel. And Emily says this looks pretty similar to Photoshop. Yeah, Photoshop. I know some people that use Illustrator for their design work, and they enjoy it. It really, when you're starting out, I'd say simple is best. So whatever really resonates with you, and then down the road. So for instance, with Vectorworks, I'm going to open up a file here, so just bear with me. So with Vectorworks, there's so many powerful parts of it, and one of the things is the objects. So all of these symbols here, these plant symbols, are all hybrids. So they have 2 and 3D attributes. They all have information associated with them. So this symbol is a viburnum dawn, and it's in a number 3 pot, and it has a whole slew of data attached to it. So when we go to put together a planting plan, we can easily generate these sheets here, and these are pretty vital. We're not really too worried about them in this course, but this is vital not only for the client, but for anybody who's installing the landscape, because they can just send this off to a wholesale nursery for pricing, right? So the software will help, produce this for us. We don't have to go and count every individual symbol. So Christy has a question here. Can we submit something with a watermark? Well, you could. I don't know if you'd be happy with the look of it. That really depends. As long as it's not distracting from the design, the watermark may be quite muted, so that would be just fine. That's really up to you. I would not be dabbling in Vectorworks at the moment. Even the simplest thing can be quite daunting in it. And I'll just show you another bonus of it. Right up here, you can see we built these, or designed some retaining walls, which we did build, and we can display them in a 3D view here. Now, these need to be updated. And now there we go, giving us some information we don't want. But that's one of the beauties, is to be able to see the landscape in a 3-dimensional space. And I'll give you a quick tour of that. So you need site information. You need contour information in order to achieve that. Oh. So there you go. This is one thing I really like about it. You can just basically fly over your project site. And right now I'm having some video issues because I got so many things turned on right now. So normally I would be looking at the project site there. All right, well, let's go back to our questions. Here we go. So I think I covered that off, Joseph. Make sure. Oh, we've got another thing in the chat here. Are you able to import data from natural capital plant database into Vectorworks? Joe, I don't know about that. Basically, with the database that I use, I just built it, and then once it's built, that's it. So I don't need to import anything. I just do on occasion create new symbols or new plant, new symbols. Grace here has another note. So it's a note to Emily. Yeah, there's also SketchUp, which I've used. I've used SketchUp for rainwater harvesting designs. It's really good. I find SketchUp really good for non-living elements. So in other words, cisterns and piping and that sort of thing. I don't really like what it does with plants. And again, it doesn't have the same ability that Vectorworks does to generate plant lists. But it is good, and it's certainly a step up from Morpheo Trace, I would say. There's also Illustrator. Yeah. So hopefully I have answered that. Was that clear, Christy, just regarding the watermark, whether that's good or not? You can just unmute yourself if you wish, or just type something in there. Just want to make sure everybody's questions are being addressed here.
It's clear, Jamie. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so Kala had a question here. She's getting a needs authorization error on a downloadable resource. So when I go to the learning materials, and I'm not sure if Kala's on the call or not, if you go to the learning materials that are via the modules page, right? And then you go down to lesson 2 learning materials, I'm able to access all of them here. If you are having any technical difficulties, I would get a hold of Canvas, and that would be just via this icon here, the help icon on the left. I'm afraid I can help you out with all things involving this course, except when we get to technical issues with the platform itself. So I would definitely contact Canvas for that. You should be able to access all the lesson 2 learning materials, whether they're videos or reading, or the links here, or any of the supplemental. So there's so much content. That's one of the daunting things about the course, right? You have a lot of content to go through, plus there's all of this information that's out there that you can take a look at. But we tried to assemble this in such a way where you can really, cut the chafe, so to speak, and just find the information you're looking for. All right. So that is all of the questions that were on the Q&A document. So after today's call, I'm going to answer all of those. I'll have them all written out, kind of like what we did last time. And I will certainly include any diagrams or little screenshots. Now here's another base plan example that's on one of the pages of the Q&A doc. And this was a survey. This is a topographic survey that we had a surveyor do. And you can see it's really basic. It's just showing the house, garage, deck, and we have these contour lines. Now they look like they're 1/2 meter. Yeah, so these are 1/2 meter contours. And then there's a ditch out here and the plan number, and this is north up, so we know that. And then there's a fence here, and this is a great example of the advantage of a surveyor sometimes. You can see the property boundary, the fence, the physical boundary is here, whereas the actual property line is well inside it. And our clients were a little bit surprised when they found that out. I think they're going to try and purchase this little strip here, but yeah, there's always the odd surprise when you get a survey done. Well, there can be. Anthony has a question here. Who do we ask if the supplemental contact needs a password? Yeah, well, you would want to, again, go to the help and click on that. Now, if I click on it, it's completely different because I'm an instructor, but you'll have a couple of different ways of contacting Canvas. And one might be a chat box, and one might be a phone or an email access. So there's probably 2 or 3 different ways of getting a hold of them. And that's who I would talk to about anything related to the technical issues on the platform here. All right. Well, does anybody on the call have any questions about lesson 2 or anything else you want to discuss? We've got about 7 minutes left. If you want to chat about anything, I'm totally happy to do that. All right. There's a couple of questions here. How best do we get contour lines onto the base map in Google Slides? Well, that's a good question. One thing you can do, oh, I can't do anything here. I'd have to make a copy. There we go. So what you should be able to do with Google Slides here is have various layers. Okay, so if we were going to go to your, and there may be a tutorial here too. So if I go onto the base map page and I just zoom out, I'm going to see all kinds of tutorials around the edge of the sheet that I'm going to be working on. So what you'd want to do is place your image. So let's say you took a screenshot of Contour Creator, you'd place the image and scale it as best you can. And then you could leave it as the bottom layer. And I'm just trying to think with slides, you have a transparency setting. So what you'd have to do is make sure your contour line, the transparency is set. so that you can view anything above or below it. And I believe you can send it back. So all of this should be within these tutorials. And I don't actually have time to build a base map for you. I'm just trying to, yeah. So the base map, everything is an overlay. So your contours, if I was building a base map, knowing what I do with slides is I'd put the contours, the contour sheet at the bottom, and you could either leave it as is and create a base map over top of it, or you could trace those contours. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. Hopefully that helps. Let me see here. I'm not sure who asked that question. Not showing who you were. But hopefully that, yeah, I would really check out the tutorials on that. So you need to make a background, and the transparency needs to be adjusted. But if you're having trouble, let me know and I will dive deeper into that. Okay, so another question here from Grace. Should your legend all fit on the same page? Yes. Please make that happen. That's really hard. One of the hardest things is when you have a map and there's information on two sheets and you're having to go back and forth. So if you have to squeeze the size of your base map down, then no problem. It's you really want to have the ability to see everything in one go, like you're seeing right here in this example. This is a lovely example. Got contours and a nice legend on the side here. And Gabriel, heating and cooling system, different environmental options. No structures at this time. So you have a project site without any structure, and you're concerned about heating and cooling systems for that. Is that right, Gabriel?
Yeah, I'm just starting to do the research. So I kind of don't even know where to start really, like, because I really want to be as environmental as possible. That's my goal anyway.
Yeah, I guess that really, goes back to your future structure and how that's being built, and what kind of, like, if it's a passive solar house, if it's, like what you're going to find as we go through the course here, is there's solar gain to consider when you're starting to, if you're fortunate enough to be able to design your own house or have an influence on it, you want to, most houses are rectangular. So if you have a rectangular house, you want those larger faces facing north and south. And that way you can pick up the most winter sun, and as well, you obviously have to account for shading, right? So one of the really good resources you might want to check out is Brad Lancaster's book, and it's called Rainwater Harvestings for Drylands and Beyond. And I know it doesn't sound like it has anything to do with solar aspect, but there's a chapter in there that's quite brilliant. He's in Tucson, Arizona, and he's able to cool his house without any AC. And it's just in part the way the house was built and the shading that is provided during the summer and during the hot time of the year. I believe the south face of his house is fully shaded, so it's not gaining all that heat during the day. It's quite a brilliant approach. I know where I live, we're kind of set up that way. We have an older home. It's built in the 80s, but we were really lucky. It was orientated in that north-south direction, so we do get a lot of winter heat. As well, we're shading the house in the summer. So there's a lot of factors there, and that's a great starting point. Is Brad's, and it'd be volume 1 that has that information in it. So
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we could talk for hours about that. So yeah. So good luck with that. Yeah, that's a deep rabbit hole you're going down. So Anthony here, I'm just gonna try and wrap up these as we're at 10 o'clock. Oh, Anthony has some advice here for active cooling heating. Look in the heat pumps. Yeah, that's a great idea. We have one ourselves. Very effective. Yeah, it's nice to have the air conditioning ability as well as the heating ability. Okay, and Anthony, got one for my house. Yes, it does reduce your energy use. When we moved into our house, all we had was wood. We were basically on wood heat only for at least a decade, and a lot of work. I love it, but when we got a heat pump, it was really, really nice, especially in the transitional time of the year when you don't really want to be putting a fire on if you just need to take the edge off in the morning. And some information here from Hannah, so you might want to take a look at that. Passive design, yeah. So Anne had a question here. For a bigger plot, can you split it up into multiple slides? Well, that's a really good question. And we've had students who've had a couple hundred acres, down to a really small urban lot. For your base plan, you want to keep it as one map. So even if it's 6 acres, put everything on one map. And as we go through the course, you may decide, I want to really focus on, say, zone 1, which is around the house. And in that case, you may just take a screenshot of that portion of the base map and build on that. But we do want to keep it all in one slide. It's really tough for somebody that doesn't know your site to understand it when it's broken up into pieces. So yeah, keep it as one. Yeah, integrated design. It's quite an incredible book and good for Brad. Yeah, I tell you what, just one sec, I'll get the book and show it to you. Sorry about that. Okay. So, oh gosh. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not coming across too well. So rainwater harvestings for dry lands and beyond. And this is, I don't know if you can see it, but this is volume 1. And there's a volume 2. But volume 1 is really awesome. And they're both really good. But the volume 1 has the information in it that we've been referencing. You can find that online. He has a website you can buy it off of. Harvestingtherain.com is the web address.
Sorry, could you lift it up again? It wasn't visible on my screen. I'm just seeing the base map.
Yeah, sorry. I've got a setting that blurs my background, and it's probably not going to let. Oh,
look. Okay.
That's kind of working. Yeah, beautiful book. Lots of really good information. And Christopher here, having lived in Tucson. Yeah. Tucson would be extremely warm for sure. So anything, even in this part of the world where we do get heat domes and we get extreme cold, if you have an opportunity to either augment or design your house in such a way where you're taking advantage of the winter warmth, or you're shading in the summer, it's a great approach. Save you energy, and you know, quite often when we get these extremes, then all utilities tend to get stressed. So if you lost power during a heat dome and you were relying on your heat pump for cooling, then it gets a little tricky. So, okay, well, I think that we have got through all of our questions. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask about before we sign off today?
Hi, Jamie. I've got kind of a abstract, weird question. So something I'm running into is this balance between trying to be precise and accurate in the base map, but also like the scale and complexity is just kind of a little beyond me. And so, and also the fact that like there are like new dynamic things that are being installed almost constantly. And so, yeah, I'm just wondering if you have any advice on how to manage that.
What size is your project site?
It's 126 acres.
Right.
And so this last weekend, for instance, we had a work party out and we planted, probably 700-800 willow.
I see.
Things like that will continue to happen and emerge. And
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I would just try and take a snapshot based on, say, today, right?
Okay, yeah.
So whatever you've done up to today, great. And then as you're going through the course, if there's significant additions or changes made, you can always update your base map, right? But I hear you, there's a lot going on, and normally that would not be the case with a design, right? In fact, if you're a designer and you have a client and there's a lot of activity going on during the design, that's a bit of a red flag, because you certainly don't want that happening. That's creating more constraints on a daily or weekly basis. So from an accuracy point of view, you're trying to document, say, these new additions with some level of accuracy. Is that part of your challenge?
That's part of the challenge. And also, I'd like to be able to use this document and, just give my friend, the client, free access to it in the future for their purposes. And so there's an iterative aspect, right, where just like the spigots alone, thinking about that, I think there's at least like a dozen spigots spread in different spots, and there's other variables and layers and layers and layers of stuff that will kind of need to be iteratively put in.
Well, there's an easy way around that. I'm just going to take a look at it here. So if you have a cell phone, which that's pretty safe to say you do.
It's hilarious you say that, because I only have a flip phone and I lost it over the weekend.
Okay. If you had a phone, or say you have a friend with one, right? There's an app called Theodolite. Theodolite. And what it does is it's like a camera app. So I can spell it for you. THEODOLITE. And what it does, I've used it a few times with our work. If you're on your project site and you have your camera or a camera with this app on it, and you open it and you go and take a picture, it logs a number of different aspects. It's your coordinates, your elevation, the direction you're pointing, and that you can pop into Google Earth. so that you can actually get within a few meters, say 6 or 8 feet of accuracy where a tree was planted. Right. So that's one way. Or say you have some hydrants. So that's probably what's on your site rather than the spigots. They're underground piping that's on most of the year. It comes out of the ground on a big red lever. Yeah. So same thing. Take a picture of it, and you can upload that onto Google Earth quite easily. So
Okay.
those coordinates give you, a pretty reasonable degree of accuracy. And I think I'd say with 126, acres, you don't need to be plus or minus a foot. You could be plus or minus 10 feet, and you're going to be in pretty good shape. So you could do that with all kinds of different elements, like trees that are being planted, any water sources. There are limitations, right? You wouldn't want to be surveying a property with it, but certain elements, that's one way of grabbing them. There's another app called Gaia GPS. I've not used that. I learned about that through the Agrarian platform, the Rex training platform. So I'm going to try that out one day. It's the same idea. You're taking an image and it's taking a note of exactly where you're standing, so that it's kind of geo-referenced image. So it will place itself onto Google Earth accurately, or plus or minus 10 feet or so.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you might
Yeah,
want to
that's
check
great.
that out. Gabriel put the link up for Brad's book. Thank you, Gabriel. That's great. And yeah, so I think we're at the end of our Q&A today. Does anybody else have any questions that they feel they want to have answered today?
My apologies. You totally spelt it out, but I didn't have my notes ready to go. What was the first app you mentioned again?
Oh, okay. Theo, so TheODOLITE.
Perfect. Thank you. I've written it down with a PH instead of a TH and then couldn't find it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
Thank you.
I've got an iPhone, and I think it was, if it's not a free app, it's a few dollars, and very interesting. We don't use it a lot, but when we do need it, it's extremely valuable. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for taking time today to be part of this meeting. I really enjoy the Q&A discussions, and yeah, hopefully we have gotten everybody on the right path in terms of getting your base plan together. So if you run into any challenges, please don't hesitate to drop me a note, and I'll help you out as much as I can. And really look forward to seeing your base plans next week. And yeah, everybody have a great week, and thank you again.
Bye.
See you later.